The steel door of storage unit 47 groaned shut behind them, sealing Grant Lawson and his German shepherd inside a tomb of frozen air. 2:47 in the morning, 18 degrees below zero outside. Maybe 12 degrees warmer in here. Maybe. Grant's breath came out in short, crystallized clouds. Each exhale felt like his last. Rex lay across his chest, 78 pounds of fur and muscle and fading body heat. The dog's heart drummed against Grant's ribs steady, loyal, refusing to quit, even as Grant's own pulse stuttered and slowed. 40 years of mistakes, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 daughter he'd abandoned. And now, dying in Milwaukee because of a $50 gamble on a storage unit full of junk. His vision blurred. Somewhere in the darkness, metal scraped against concrete, the same sound an IED tripwire made in Kandahar. Rex's ears shot forward. A low growl rumbled in his throat. They weren't alone. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Grant Lawson had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 years in a VA psychiatric ward, and 3 winters on Milwaukee streets. At 58 years old, his body was a map of survival scars from shrapnel, a Purple Heart tattoo fading on his forearm, hands that shook every morning until the tremors passed. His face told the story that his voice rarely did hollow cheeks. Eyes that had seen too much, a gray beard he trimmed with scissors stolen from a gas station bathroom. He'd been a combat engineer once, defused 67 improvised explosive devices, saved countless lives. Then the 68th device took 3 of his brothers in a single blast, and David Chin, his best friend. His brother, in everything but blood, had burned alive while screaming Grant's name. That was 15 years ago. Grant had come home to Sarah and 12-year-old Emily, but the war never left his head. The nightmares, the drinking, the rage that erupted without warning. Sarah had tried for 3 years before she took Emily and left. Grant didn't blame her. He'd have left himself if he could. 7 years since he'd spoken to Emily. 7 years, a choosing alcohol over sobriety. Streets over shelters, isolation over help. The VA had benefits waiting for him, $3,279 monthly. Over $196,000. Unclaimed over 5 years. He'd never filed, couldn't face the paperwork, the questions, the fluorescent-lit offices that smelled like failure and government forms. His entire net worth fit in his pockets, $53.47. His home was a 1997 Dodge van with 200,000 miles, parked behind an abandoned brewery. His family was Rex. Rex, the German shepherd, with a scar across his left eye and a limp in his right front leg, 78 pounds of loyalty wrapped in black and tan fur. David Chin's dog. Technically, Grant had promised David in those final burning moments that he'd take care of Rex like his own son. He'd broken that promise in 2010, his worst year. When the PTSD got so bad, he'd tried to hang himself in the van. He'd given Rex to a shelter, told himself the dog deserved better. But Rex had other plans. The shepherd escaped 4 foster homes over 2 years, tracked Grant across 3 states through some instinct Grant couldn't explain, and showed up at his van one November morning in 2010. They'd been inseparable since. Rex needed a $2,400 hip surgery Grant couldn't afford. Grant needed reasons to stay alive. They kept each other breathing, one day at a time, through Milwaukee winters that killed 3 homeless people last year alone. Now, Grant stood outside Margaret Sullivan's pawn shop, reading about a storage unit auction, and wondered if $50 could buy him a miracle, or if miracles were something men like him didn't deserve anymore. Grant Lawson pressed his face against the frosted window of Sullivan's Second Chances pawn shop, watching his breath fog the glass. Inside, Margaret Sullivan arranged items on velvet-lined displays, watches that had counted other people's time, rings that had promised other people's forevers. His stomach twisted with hunger. 3 days since his last real meal. The 67 cents in his pocket wouldn't buy much more than a pack of crackers. Rex whined softly beside him, the old German shepherd's breath, creating small clouds in the bitter January air. The thermometer outside the hardware store across the street read -12 degrees. Wind chills made it feel like -28. Grant pulled his threadbare military jacket tighter, though it did little against Milwaukee's winter fury. A paper flyer taped to the shop window caught his attention. Bold red letters screamed against White Charity Storage Auction. Saturday, January 13th. 10 a.m. All proceeds benefit Homeless Veterans Fund. Unit site unseen. Cash only. Sullivan's Second Chances, 847 North Avenue. Tomorrow. The auction was tomorrow. Grant's hands trembled as he read the list of available units, numbers 1 through 8, standard storage spaces, probably full of someone's forgotten life. Furniture nobody wanted. Boxes of photographs with faces nobody remembered, but Unit 47 sat at the bottom of the list, separated from the others by a stark black line. Special item, locked 40 years. Owner deceased, no living relatives. Starting bid $50. $50. He had exactly $53.47 to his name. His entire net worth earned from 2 weeks of bottle collecting and 1 day of snow shoveling that nearly broke his back. That money was supposed to buy food, dog food, Rex's hip dysplasia medication he couldn't afford from the veterinarian. Storage units reminded him of shipping containers in Kandahar, dark metal boxes that might hold supplies or might hold death. He'd opened 67 of them during his deployment, 67 times walking toward possible oblivion. The 68th container had killed 3 of his brothers. He'd watched them die, watched David Chen burn while screaming Grant's name. He touched the Purple Heart tattoo on his forearm, now faded and blurred beneath years of weather and neglect. What would David say, David, who'd made Grant promise to take care of Rex? David, whose dog now depended on a homeless man who couldn't even take care of himself. The shop door opened, warm air rushed out, carrying the scent of coffee and cinnamon. Margaret Sullivan stood in the doorway, 72 years old with silver hair pulled into a practical bun, her eyes sharp and knowing, fixed on Grant. "Coffee's getting cold," she said simply. Grant shook his head. "Can't pay. Didn't ask you to." She held the door wider. "It's too cold for pride. Son," something in her voice made Rex's tail wag. The dog trusted her immediately, which was unusual. Rex trusted nobody except Grant. The shepherd had been through too much, the war, the shelters, the fighting rings Grant had rescued him from 2 years ago. Rex's scar-crossed face told stories Grant wished he could forget. Inside the shop, Margaret poured black coffee from a thermos. Steam rose in lazy spirals. She set the cup on the counter between them, then placed a blueberry muffin beside it. Grant's stomach clenched so hard it hurt. "I seen you looking at that flyer," Margaret said, settling onto her stool behind the register. "The auction." "Just looking." Grant wrapped his cold-numbed fingers around the coffee cup, absorbing its heat. "Can't afford it." $50 for Unit 47, if nobody else bids. She studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You got $50. He nodded slowly. "Then you can afford it." Margaret pulled a photograph from her pocket, glanced at it, then tucked it away before Grant could see. Her hand trembled slightly. "That unit's been locked since 1985. 40 years of secrets. Could be nothing. Could be everything. Or could be junk. Could be." She sipped her own coffee. "But I got a feeling about it, and I got a feeling about you." Rex pressed against Grant's leg, the shepherd's solid warmth grounding him. Grant thought about David's last words, spoken through blood and smoke and burning metal. "Take care of him, brother. Promise me. Be better than we were. Be the man you were before the war broke us." Grant drained the coffee, felt it burn down his throat into his empty stomach. "What time tomorrow?" 10 o'clock sharp. Bring cash." Margaret's eyes softened. "And bring that good dog of yours. Something tells me he's gonna be important." Grant didn't understand what she meant. He wouldn't understand until it was almost too late. Outside, the temperature continued to drop. Tomorrow would bring the coldest night Milwaukee had seen in 20 years. Tomorrow would bring an auction, and tomorrow would begin the unraveling of 40 years of lies. But tonight, Grant Lawson walked back to his rel with $53, a full stomach for the first time in days, and the terrible hope that maybe, just maybe, his luck was about to change. He had no idea how right he was, or how much that change would cost him. The first thing Grant noticed when Rex began digging at the sofa was the smell. Not the expected mustiness of fabric that had rotted in darkness for 40 years. Something else. Something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up the same way it had outside villages in Kandahar when the air tasted wrong. "Rex, leave it!" Grant's voice echoed in the metal storage unit. 10 o'clock at night. And he'd been sorting through garbage for 7 hours. Broken furniture, water-damaged boxes of moth-eaten clothes, yellowed newspapers from 1985 with headlines about a president he'd forgotten. Nothing worth $50. Nothing worth 50 cents. The German shepherd ignored him. Rex scratched harder at the sofa's underside, claws scraping fabric with desperate intensity. A low whine built in his throat, the same sound he'd made in Afghanistan when he detected buried explosives. Grant's pulse quickened. "Rex, come!" The dog didn't budge. In 2 years of living together, Rex had never disobeyed a direct command. Never. Grant knelt beside him, his knees cracking against the concrete floor. The sofa had been expensive, once leather, now cracked and peeling, stuffing spilling from tears that might have been made by rodents or time or something worse. Rex dug at a specific spot where the fabric hung loose, revealing a darkness underneath that shouldn't exist. "What do you smell, boy?" Rex's answer was to dig harder. His damaged front leg barely slowing him down. Fabric tore. Stuffing exploded in clouds of dust that made Grant cough, and then Rex's paw broke through into a hollow space that had been sealed for 4 decades. Grant pulled the dog back gently. His hand shook as he widened the opening, tearing away fabric and padding until he could see inside the sofa's hidden compartment. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness. A waterproof military case, hard plastic, government issue, the kind used to protect sensitive equipment from moisture and impact, the kind Grant had opened 1,000 times in Afghanistan, the kind that sometimes held death. He sat back on his heels, breathing hard, Rex pressed against his side, still whining that urgent warning sound. The dog knew, somehow. Rex knew this mattered. Grant's fingers found the latches. They clicked open easily, as if someone had opened them recently, though that was impossible. The case had been sealed inside furniture for longer than some of the soldiers Grant had served with had been alive. Inside, 3 items lay wrapped in plastic that had kept them pristine despite the decades. The first bundle was money. Stacks of $20 and $50 bills, bound with rubber bands that crumbled to dust when Grant touched them. He counted mechanically, his mind refusing to process what his hands were doing. $12,000. $12,000 that could change everything, could get Rex's surgery, could get him off the streets. Could he set the money aside with shaking hands and reached for the second item? A rolled canvas, sealed in layers of plastic. Heavy, professional. Grant unwrapped it carefully on the concrete floor, and his flashlight revealed an oil painting of a rural landscape. Rolling hills, a farmhouse, a harvest moon hanging low over Wisconsin fields. Beautiful. But Grant knew nothing about art. Could be worth $100. Could be worth nothing. The third item made his heart stop. A leather diary. Water-stained, the cover embossed with initials that Grant had seen before, a lifetime ago. In a photograph on his grandmother's mantel before she disappeared. D.A.L. Dorothy Ann Lawson. His hands went numb. The diary slipped, and Rex caught it gently in his jaws before it hit the ground, just as he'd been trained to retrieve objects in his military service. The dog laid it carefully in Grant's lap, then sat back, watching with those dark, intelligent eyes. Grant opened the first page, his grandmother's handwriting elegant, careful. The penmanship of a generation that still valued such things filled the yellowed paper. Property of Dorothy Lawson, March 1980. If anyone finds this, tell Grant I never stopped loving him. The storage unit spun. Grant braced himself against the sofa, breathing through his nose the way his therapist at the VA had taught him before he'd stopped going to therapy, before he'd stopped believing he deserved to be fixed. He forced himself to read the first entry. March 3rd, 1980. I witnessed something tonight I was never meant to see. I was cleaning the Milwaukee Art Museum after hours when 2 men broke in through the service entrance. They didn't know I was there. I watched them cut a painting from its frame, a beautiful landscape by Thomas Hart Benton. One of the men was Raymond Brennan. I recognized him from the newspapers. The other, I didn't know. They saw me. Raymond looked right at me and smiled, and I knew in that moment I was in terrible danger. I'm writing this because if something happens to me, someone needs to know the truth. Someone needs to tell Grant that I didn't abandon him, that I fought to come back to him, that I loved him until my last breath. Grant's vision blurred. 40 years. 40 years he'd believed his grandmother had abandoned him, just like his mother had. 40 years of feeling unlovable, unwanted, disposable, and she'd been murdered. Rex pressed closer, solid and warm, and alive. The dog's presence was the only thing keeping Grant from falling completely apart. Because the final entry in the diary, written in handwriting that deteriorated from elegant to desperate, was dated May 15th, 1980. Day 20 of being locked in this storage unit. So cold. No one can hear me scream. Raymond Brennan did this. Tell Grant I'm sorry. Tell him I fought. Tell him the truth will set him free. Tell him. The entry ended mid-sentence. Grant sat in the darkness of Storage Unit 47, holding his grandmother's final words, and realized he was sitting in her tomb. Grant didn't sleep that night. He sat with his back against the storage unit wall, Dorothy's diary open in his lap, reading by flashlight until his eyes burned and his hands went numb from cold. Rex lay across his feet, the dog's body heat barely keeping frostbite at bay as the temperature outside dropped to negative 15 degrees. The diary entries painted a picture Grant had spent 40 years trying to forget. His grandmother had been more than just the woman who'd raised him after his mother left. She'd been his anchor, his proof that someone in this world could love him unconditionally. When she disappeared in 1985, the police had told 18-year-old Grant that she'd probably run off with a boyfriend, that she'd wanted a fresh start, that sometimes people just left. He'd believed them. God help him. He'd believed them. Now he knew the truth. Dorothy Lawson had been locked in this very storage unit by Raymond Brennan and left to die slowly over 19 days. Her entries grew more desperate as time passed, descriptions of screaming until her voice gave out, clawing at the metal door until her fingernails broke, writing in the diary to maintain sanity as dehydration and hypothermia slowly killed her. The last legible entry read, "I can hear people outside sometimes, so close, but the walls are too thick. No one hears me. Grant will think I abandoned him like his mother did. That breaks my heart more than dying. Tell him I kept my promise. Cross my heart. I never left him by choice." Grant's throat closed, Couteau. He remembered asking her, age 8, if she'd ever leave him. She'd knelt down, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Cross my heart, honey. I'll never abandon you." He'd thought she'd lied. For 40 years, he'd carried that betrayal like a stone in his chest. It had poisoned everything: his marriage, his relationship with Emily, his ability to trust that anyone would stay. And she'd been here, dying alone, keeping her promise until her last breath. Rex lifted his head, ears swiveling toward the door. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Grant killed the flashlight. Footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Multiple people, moving with purpose in the pre-dawn darkness. The beam of a powerful flashlight swept past the gaps around the storage unit door. Grant heard the metallic click of bolt cutters. "Unit 47, a man's voice said. "You're sure this is it? My father's map was very specific." A second voice, cultured and strained. Grant recognized it from the auction. "Jake Brennan. The painting's in there. It has to be. And if the homeless guy already found it, then we persuade him to give it back." The bolt cutters bit through the padlock Margaret had given Grant. The door rolled upward with a shriek of metal on metal. Flashlight beams flooded the unit, blinding Grant where he sat against the back wall. Well, Jake Brennan stepped inside, flanked by two men built like NFL linebackers. One Grant vaguely recognized from the homeless camps, Marcus, who'd done time for assault. The other was a stranger, all neck tattoos and dead eyes. "Comfortable, Mr. Lawson." Grant rose slowly. Rex pressed against his leg. The dog's hackles stood straight up, teeth bared in silent warning. "It's 4 in the morning." "I know what time it is." Jake's expensive cologne couldn't mask the smell of fear sweat up close. Grant could see the desperation in the younger man's eyes. Designer suit, Rolex watch, manicured hands, and the hollow look of someone drowning. "I need that painting." "What painting?" "Don't play stupid." Jake's voice cracked. "Thomas Hart Benton, Harvest Moon over Wisconsin, stolen from the Milwaukee Art Museum in 1980. My father stole it. He hid it here before he got caught on another job. It's mine, by right. Your father murdered my grandmother." Grant's voice came out flat, emotionless. The tone he'd used in Afghanistan when telling families their sons weren't coming home. "She died in this unit, locked inside for 19 days while Raymond Brennan walked free." Jake flinched. "I know. He told me before he died in prison last year. He confessed everything." His hands shook as he ran them through his hair. "You think I'm proud of that? You think I want any part of this? Then walk away." "I can't." Jake's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "I owe $789,000 to people who'll kill me if I don't pay my father's medical bills, his lawyers, then my own stupidity with sports betting. They gave me 30 days. That was 28 days ago." Grant understood desperation. He'd lived it for 3 years. But understanding didn't mean acceptance. "So you'll compound your father's crimes, steal from a dead woman. She's been dead 40 years. You've been living in a van. That painting is worth $380,000. We split it. You get enough to change your life. I get enough to save mine. And the museum? Screw the museum. They're insured. We're dying out here." Rex's growl deepened. The dog had shifted position, placing himself between Grant and the 3 men. Military training plus 2 years on the streets had made Rex fearless and dangerous. Marcus eyed the German shepherd nervously. "Boss, that dog's going to be a problem." "Then remove the problem," Jake said quietly. "Touch my dog and I'll kill you." Grant's voice carried absolute certainty. He'd killed before, in Afghanistan, in defense of his brothers. He'd do it again in defense of Rex. The 4 men stood in silence, breath clouding in the freezing air. Outside, Milwaukee slept, unaware of the confrontation playing out in a storage unit that held 40 years of secrets and death. Jake broke first. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just need that painting. Name your price." "It's not for sale." "Everything's for sale. You're homeless. You're obviously suffering from PTSD based on your shaking hands and the way you keep checking exits. You need help. That money could get you help." "I need to do the right thing." Grant's hands were indeed shaking, but not from PTSD, from cold and hunger and the weight of holding his grandmother's diary. "My grandmother did protecting the truth about that painting. I won't dishonor her by selling it to her murderer's son." "I'm not my father." "Then prove it. Walk away." Jake's face twisted with something between rage and despair. "I have 2 kids. Sophie's 14, Ryan's 11. They don't know we're about to lose everything, that their college funds are gone, that men are threatening to burn our house down if I don't pay." His voice broke. My daughter asked me last week if I was going to kill myself like her friend's father did. She's 14 and she's watching me fall apart, and I can't let them suffer for my mistakes." Grant felt something shift in his chest. He recognized the look on Jake's face. He'd seen it in his own mirror right before Sarah had taken Emily and left. The look of a man at the absolute end. "There's another way," Grant said carefully. "We call the FBI. Turn in the painting. There's probably a reward. The museum would... The reward's 100,000 if there is one. That's not enough. It doesn't even cover half." Jake pulled a gun from his coat, not pointing it, just holding it, just letting Grant see it. "I'm sorry. I really am. But I'm taking that painting. You can have the money you've found. 12 grand, right? That's more than you've had in years. Take it. Buy a house. Get help. Just give me the painting." Rex launched before Grant could react. 80 pounds of trained military attack dog hit Marcus square in the chest, bearing him to the ground. The big man screamed as Rex's jaws locked on his arm, shaking like he was killing prey. The storage unit erupted into chaos. The tattooed man rushed Grant. Years of combat training kicked in. Grant sidestepped, used the man's momentum against him, sent him crashing into the torn sofa. Jake raised the gun, not at Grant, but at Rex. "Call off your dog or I shoot Rex out." Grant's command cut through the snarling and screaming. Rex released Marcus immediately, backing toward Grant, but maintaining eye contact with the three men. Blood dripped from the dog's muzzle. Marcus clutched his mangled arm, whimpering. "It bit through to the bone. Oh, God, it bit through to the bone." "Everyone calm down." Jake's gun hand shook badly. "Nobody else needs to get hurt." "Then leave." Grant positioned himself between Jake and Rex. "Take your friends. Get Marcus to a hospital. I'll pretend this never happened. Give me the painting first." "No." "I'll shoot the dog." "Then you'll have to shoot me too, because I'll tear you apart with my bare hands." They stared at each other across 6 feet of freezing air. Two desperate men, two different kinds of broken, both drowning in different ways. The tattooed man climbed to his feet, murder in his eyes. "Forget this. I'm taking what we came for and putting that animal down." He reached for Rex. The dog lunged again, faster than thought, and suddenly everyone was moving. Jake fired a deafening crack in the metal space. The bullet sparked off the wall inches from Grant's head. Rex had the tattooed man by the leg, dragging him down. Marcus stumbled backward through the door, fleeing into the darkness. Grant tackled Jake, both men crashing into boxes that exploded in clouds of 40-year-old dust. The gun skittered across concrete. Jake fought with desperate strength, landing blows that Grant barely felt through the adrenaline. They rolled, grappling, until Grant's hand closed around something solid, the metal case that had held the painting. He brought it down on Jake's temple, not hard enough to kill, hard enough to stun. Jake went limp. The tattooed man had given up fighting Rex and was crawling toward the door, leaving a trail of blood. The German shepherd stood over him, growling, waiting for Grant's command to finish it. "Rex, come." The dog obeyed instantly, trotting to Grant's side. Blood matted his fur, some his, some not. Grant's hands shook as he checked Jake's pulse. Strong and steady. The younger man would have a concussion, but would live. He looked at the painting, still rolled in its protective plastic. At the diary that proved a 40-year-old murder. At $12,000 in cash, that could change his life. And he made his decision. But first, He had to survive the night, because Jake Brennan wasn't the only one who knew about Storage Unit 47, and Grant's troubles were just beginning. Grant dragged Jake's unconscious body outside the storage unit and left him in the gravel parking lot. The tattooed man had already fled, limping badly. Marcus was long gone. Dawn broke cold and gray over Milwaukee, the sky the color of old bruises. Rex limped beside Grant, favoring his right front leg. Blood matted the fur around his mouth, but the dog's eyes remained alert, scanning for threats. Grant knelt to examine him, hands gentle despite their trembling. "You're okay, boy. You did good." His voice cracked. "You always do good." The German shepherd licked his face once, then resumed his protective stance, always on duty, always faithful. Grant's van was gone. He stood in the empty space behind the abandoned brewery where he'd parked it for 6 months, staring at broken glass and oil stains. His home, his shelter. Everything he owned beyond the clothes on his back and the dog at his side. Gone. A piece of paper fluttered under a brick where the driver's side door had been. Grant picked it up with numb fingers. "You took something of mine. I took something of yours. The painting for your dog's life. Tonight. Midnight. The old Pabst Brewery. Loading dock 3. Come alone, or Rex dies screaming." No signature. None needed. Grant crumpled the note. Jake must have sent someone while he'd been at the storage unit. Professional, calculated. The gun at the storage unit had been desperation. This was strategy. 7 p.m. now, 5 hours until midnight. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from cold, though the temperature had dropped to -18. Not from fear, though fear lived in his chest like broken glass. From rage. Pure, incandescent rage that he hadn't felt since Afghanistan, since watching David Chen burn. "I need help," he whispered to Rex. "I can't do this alone." The dog whined softly, pressing against his leg. Grant walked the 2 miles to Sullivan's Second Chances. His feet went numb in his worn boots. Rex limped beside him, refusing to slow down, refusing to show weakness. Pride and pain carried in every step. Margaret Sullivan took one look at them through the shop window and threw the door open before Grant could knock. Sweet Jesus! She pulled them inside, locked the door behind them. What happened? Grant told her everything. The painting, the diary, Dorothy's murder, Jake's attack, the ultimatum. Margaret listened without interrupting, her weathered face growing harder with each detail. When he finished, she poured whiskey into 2 glasses, pushed one toward Grant. "I'm trying to stay sober. Trying doesn't keep you warm." She drank hers in one swallow. "That painting's worth $380,000, maybe more. I know. Jake Brennan's father killed your grandmother's, I know. And you're thinking about giving him the painting anyway?" Not a question. Margaret saw too much, understood too much. Grant stared at the untouched whiskey. "I'm thinking about a 14-year-old girl who doesn't know her father's about to get himself killed. I'm thinking about my own daughter, who I haven't spoken to in 7 years because I was too broken to be anyone's father." He met Margaret's eyes. "I'm thinking that revenge won't bring my grandmother back, but maybe mercy can stop another family from breaking." "That's real pretty philosophy for a man about to freeze to death." Margaret's voice softened. "You got nowhere to sleep. No vehicle, no money except what you found. And you're not touching that because You think it's evidence. What's your plan? Grant hope. Jake grows a conscience. I'm giving him the painting. The hell you are. I'm giving him the painting, Grant repeated. And then I'm calling the bee. I'll tell them everything. Dorothy's diary is evidence. They can track Jake, recover the painting, prosecute him for receiving stolen property. He'll do time, but he'll be alive. His kids will have a father, even if he's in prison. Margaret studied him for a long moment. You know what I think? I think you're not trying to save Jake Brennan. You're trying to save yourself, trying to prove you can be the man you were before the war broke you. The words hit like a physical blow. Grant's hand closed around the whiskey glass. The amber liquid caught the light, promising warmth and oblivion. He'd been sober 90 days. 90 days of white-knuckling through nightmares and flashbacks and the constant weight of failure. He pushed the glass away. Maybe. But Rex didn't drag me out of the darkness just so I could become another version of Jake, desperate and dangerous and willing to hurt people to survive. Grant's voice steadied. I have to try. For Dorothy, for Emily, for the man I promised David Chin I'd be. Margaret pulled out her phone. Then you're not going alone. The note said, I don't care what the note said. That boy's got hired muscle and desperation. You got Pete's and a three-legged dog. Odds aren't exactly in your favor. She dialed a number, waited. Robert, it's Maggie Sullivan. I need a favor, a big one. Grant listened as Margaret explained the situation to someone named Robert Torres, former FBI. Retired 3 years ago, but still consulted on cold cases. He'd worked Dorothy's disappearance back in '85. Never closed the case. Never stopped looking. He'll meet us at the brewery, Margaret said after hanging up. 11:30. He'll have backup standing by, but out of sight. You make the exchange. He moves in after, clean and legal. Jake will run. Let him run. Torres will have people watching every exit. Brennan's not getting away with your grandmother's murder, and he's not getting away with that painting. Grant wanted to believe it could be that simple, but nothing in his life had ever been simple. They spent the next hours preparing. Margaret closed the shop early, fed Grant and Rex chicken soup that Grant could barely taste, but that filled the hollow ache in his stomach. She produced a winter coat, real wool, barely worn. My son James's, she said quietly. He was about your size, died in Iraq in 2006. He'd want someone to use it. Grant accepted the coat with shaking hands. It smelled like mothballs and someone else's life. I'm sorry. Me too. Every damn day. Margaret's eyes glistened. But I'm not letting another veteran freeze to death on my watch. You hear me? Grant Lawson not on my watch. At 11 p.m., Grant's phone rang. The burner cell Margaret had given him months ago for emergencies. He'd never used it, didn't even know anyone had the number. Dad. The world stopped. That voice, 7 years older, raw with tears, but unmistakable. Emily. Oh, God, you answered. I thought I'd been trying to find you for so long, and his daughter sobbed, the sound breaking something fundamental in Grant's chest. Baby girl. The words came out strangled. How did you, Ms. Sullivan gave me this number. Months ago, I've been too scared to call. Emily's breathing was ragged, desperate. Dad, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you before. Before what? Silence stretched. When Emily spoke again, her voice was small and frightened. The same voice she'd had at 5 years old after nightmares. "I'm sick, Daddy, really sick, Key. I have cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 3. The doctors say I need a bone marrow transplant. They say I have maybe 6 weeks without it." She broke down completely. "I need you. I know I have no right to ask after you left, after everything, but I need you. I'm so scared and I don't want to die without telling you I forgive you. I forgive you for everything. Please, please, please. I need my dad." Grant's legs gave out. He collapsed against the shop counter. Phone pressed so hard to his ear, it hurt. Rex whined, pushing his head under Grant's free hand. "Where are you?" Grant forced the words through a throat that felt crushed. "Madison, at the university hospital, but I checked myself out. Against doctor's orders, I'm driving to Milwaukee. Ms. Sullivan told me where to find you. I'll be there in an hour." Emily's voice turned fierce through the tears. "Don't you dare disappear again. Don't you dare. I'm coming, and we're going to figure this out together. Do you hear me?" "I hear you." Grant was crying now. Couldn't stop. "Emmy, I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry for everything. Save it. Tell me in person. In 1 hour. Promise me you'll be there." Grant looked at the clock. 11:15. Emily would arrive at 12:15. The same time he was supposed to meet Jake Brennan at the brewery with a painting worth more than his life. He couldn't be in both places at once. But Emily was dying. His daughter was dying. And she'd forgiven him for abandonment he didn't deserve forgiveness for. Margaret watched him, understanding blooming across her face. She'd known, somehow. She'd known about Emily all along. "Promise me." Emily pleaded through the phone. Grant closed his eyes, saw 2 paths. One led to his daughter, one led to justice for his grandmother. Both required him to be someone he hadn't been in 15 years. Someone reliable. Someone who kept promises. Someone worth saving. "I promise," he said. "I'll be there." He had no idea how he'd keep that promise. But he'd die trying. The blizzard hit at 11:30, turning Milwaukee into a whiteout nightmare. Grant stood outside the old Pabst Brewery loading dock. The painting rolled under his arm, wind screaming through the abandoned industrial complex. Visibility dropped 10 feet. Temperature plummeted to -22 degrees, the kind of cold that killed in hours, not days. Rex pressed against his leg, the dog's body already trembling. They'd left Margaret at her shop with instructions to send Emily there when she arrived. Robert Torres was somewhere in the darkness with backup. But Grant couldn't see them. Couldn't see anything but swirling snow in the dim outline of loading dock 3. 11:58. Jake Brennan emerged from the shadows like a ghost. Alone this time. No hired muscle. Just a desperate man in an expensive coat, face gaunt with exhaustion and fear. "You came—" And Jake's voice barely carried over the wind. "I keep my promises." Grant held up the painting. "Unlike your father." Jake flinched. "I'm not here to debate morality. Now give me the painting. You walk away. We both survive." "What about my grandmother? Did she get to walk away?" "That was 40 years ago. I can't change what my father did." "No, but you can face it." Grant took a step forward. Snow immediately coated his borrowed coat, turning him white. "Your father murdered Dorothy Lawson, locked her in that storage unit, and let her die over 19 days. The diary proves it. The FBI has been looking for that painting since 1985. If you take it, you're complicit in her murder. I don't care. Jake's voice cracked. My daughter asked me yesterday if I was going to kill myself. She's 14 years old and she's watching me fall apart, and I can't. He broke down, sobbing in the freezing wind. I can't lose them. I can't let my kids grow up knowing their father was a failure who destroyed everything. Grant understood. God help him. He understood completely. I have a daughter, too, he said quietly. Emily, she's 19. I haven't seen her in 7 years because I was too broken to be her father, too drunk, too angry, too full of ghosts from Afghanistan. The wind tore at his words, but he kept talking. I left her the same way my grandmother left me, except my grandmother didn't have a choice. I did. And I chose wrong every single day for 7 years. Jake looked up, tears freezing on his cheeks. 20 minutes ago, Emily called me. She's dying. Jake, cancer. She needs a bone marrow transplant, and she has maybe 6 weeks without it. Grant's voice shattered. She called to tell me she forgives me after everything I did, everything I destroyed. She forgives me. She's driving through this blizzard to see me right now because she wants to look me in the eye and tell me she doesn't hate me. Then give me the painting and go see her. I can't, because if I give you this painting, I'm teaching her that desperation justifies betrayal, that fear excuses dishonesty, that survival matters more than truth. Grant held the painting tighter. My grandmother died protecting the truth about this painting. She died keeping her promise to me. I won't dishonor that by helping her murderer's son profit from her death. So what? You'll let me die instead? Let my kids lose their father? No. Grant pulled out his phone. I'm giving you a choice, right here, right now. We call the FBI together. Till you confess everything. You face justice for receiving stolen property. You do time. Probably 5 to 10 years. But you'll be alive. Your kids will know you chose honesty over running. And when you get out, you'll be a man who owned his mistakes instead of compounding them. Jake stared at the phone like it was a weapon. I'll lose everything. You've already lost everything. This is about what you do next. The wind howled. Snow piled around their feet. Rex whined, the dog's legs shaking badly now. Hypothermia setting in. They needed to get inside, needed warmth, needed Jake lunged, not for the painting, for Grant's throat. Desperation made him fast. Fear made him strong. They crashed into the snow, rolling, fighting. The painting flew from Grant's grip, disappeared into the white chaos. Rex attacked. 78 pounds of trained military dog hit Jake from the side, bearing him down. Jake screamed as Rex's jaws closed on his arm, the same arm Marcus had injured earlier. Blood sprayed across white snow, turning it crimson. Rex out! Grant scrambled to his feet, grabbed the dog's collar. Rex released immediately, back and toward Grant, but maintaining eye contact with Jake. The German Shepherd's training overrode everything, even protective instinct. He'd kill on command. He'd stop on command. Perfect discipline from an imperfect world. Jake clutched his mangled arm, crying, not from pain, from defeat, from the absolute collapse of every plan, every hope, every desperate gamble. I can't do it, he sobbed. I can't face them. I can't tell Sophie her dad's a criminal. I can't. Headlights cut through the blizzard. Multiple vehicles. FBI SUVs surrounding the loading dock. Robert Torres emerged from one, gun drawn but pointed down, backup flanking him. "Grant Lawson," Torres called. "Here. Where's the painting?" Grant looked at the snow where it had fallen. Visibility was so bad he couldn't see it. Couldn't see anything but white chaos and Jake Brennan bleeding and crying on the frozen ground. "I don't know," Grant admitted. "We lost it in the fight." Torres swore. "Everyone search. Now, that painting's evidence in a 40-year-old murder." Agents fanned out. Flashlights cutting through the storm, Grant knelt beside Rex, checking the dog's temperature. Too cold. The shepherd's breathing was shallow, trembling, uncontrollable. Rex was dying of exposure right in front of him. "We need to get him inside." Grant told Torres, "Now. In a minute. We need your statement." "My dog is dying." Grant's voice went flat and cold, the tone he'd used in Afghanistan when giving orders that couldn't be questioned. "I'm taking him inside. You can arrest me or help me, but I'm not letting him die for a painting." Torres looked at Rex, then at Grant, saw something in Grant's eyes that made him nod. "Loading dock office. This way." They moved through the blizzard toward a door Grant hadn't seen. Torres kicked it open. Warmth rushed out minimal, but better than the killing cold outside. Grant carried Rex inside. The dog's eyes were glazing, consciousness fading. Hypothermia's final stage, the peaceful descent into death. "Stay with me," Grant whispered, rubbing Rex's legs, trying to force circulation. "Please, boy, please don't leave me. Not like this. Not after everything." Rex's tail twitched once, a weak attempt at reassurance. Behind them, agents searched the blizzard for a painting worth $380,000. Jake Brennan was being loaded into an ambulance, under arrest despite his injuries. Torres was on the phone, calling for backup, for search teams, for forensic units, but Grant saw none of it, heard none of it. His entire world had narrowed to the dog dying in his arms and the phone in his pocket that held his daughter's number, 1215. Emily would be at Margaret's shop right now, waiting, like he'd promised. He couldn't be there. He'd broken another promise. To the only person who still believed he was worth forgiving. Rex's breathing stopped. Grant performed CPR on Rex with the mechanical precision of military training, 30 chest compressions, 2 rescue breaths into the dog's nose, mouth sealed, 30 more compressions. His hands moved without thought, driven by desperation and muscle memory from saving wounded soldiers in Kandahar. "Come on, boy, come on." Sweat poured down Grant's face despite the cold. "You don't get to leave me. Not like this, not after everything." Rex's chest remained still. Torres knelt beside them. "Grant, he's gone. I'm sorry, but he's not gone." Grant's voice broke. "He pulled me back from the edge 100 times. I'm pulling him back once." Compressions, breaths, compressions. Grant's arms burned, his vision blurred with tears. Outside, the blizzard streamed like the ghosts that haunted his nightmares, like David Chen screaming his name through fire, like Dorothy crying in the darkness of a locked storage unit, like Emily's voice on the phone, forgiving him for sins he didn't deserve forgiveness for. "Please," Grant whispered, "please. Rex, I need you. Emmy needs to meet you. You saved me so I could save her. Don't quit now. Please don't quit." Rex's chest expanded, a shallow breath, then another. The German shepherd's eyes opened, unfocused, confused, but alive. Grant collapsed over him, sobbing into the dog's fur. "That's my boy. That's my good boy." Torres stood, giving them privacy. "I'll get a vet. We'll—" The office door burst open. Margaret Sullivan stood in the doorway, snow-covered and fierce, behind her, barely visible through the blizzard. A young woman with a scarf wrapped round her thin face. Emily. Grant's daughter stepped into the light, and the world stopped. She looked nothing like he remembered. 19 now, no longer the 12-year-old girl he'd abandoned, gaunt. A port for chemotherapy visible at her collarbone where her coat gaped, hair thin and brittle under her winter hat. But her eyes, Sarah's eyes, dark and intelligent and full of determination, locked onto his face with an intensity that stripped away 7 years of distance in a single moment. "Dad!" Her voice cracked. That single word carried everything: accusation, forgiveness, relief, fear, love twisted up with a hurt so old it had become part of her bones. Grant couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Rex lay across his lap, breathing shallowly, both of them broken things held together by sheer stubbornness. "You promised you'd be at the shop," Emily said quietly. "Ms. Sullivan said you'd be there at midnight." "I'm sorry, The excuses died on his tongue. What could he say? That he'd been trying to save a painting, trying to stop a desperate man from making Grant's same mistakes, that he'd almost let his dog die in a blizzard because he was too stubborn to walk away. "You're always sorry." Emily took a step forward. She moved carefully, like someone navigating pain with every breath. "That's what Mom said. Your father's always sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything." The words cut deeper than any blade. Grant had nothing to offer. There's no defense, no explanation that would make 7 years of absence acceptable. "I know," he said finally. "I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I failed you, failed your mother, failed everyone who ever believed I was worth believing in. Stop." Emily's voice hardened. "Stop making this about your failures. Stop making everything about your pain and your guilt and your war." She was crying now, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I'm dying, Dad. I have cancer. I have maybe 6 weeks if I don't get a bone marrow transplant. And the only person in the world who's a match is you. So I don't care about your apologies. I don't care about your explanations. I need to know." Her voice broke completely. "I need to know if you'll show up, if I'm worth showing up for." The question hung between them like shattered glass. Rex stirred in Grant's lap. The dog lifted his head weakly, looked at Emily, and did something Grant had never seen him do with a stranger. Rex's tail wagged, just a slight movement, barely visible, but unmistakable. Recognition, acceptance. Emily noticed. She knelt slowly, careful of her weakened body, and held out her hand. Rex sniffed it, then licked her fingers once, gentle, trusting. "This is Rex," Grant said hoarsely. "He was your Uncle David's dog in Afghanistan. David died saving me, made me promise to take care of Rex. I gave him up when the PTSD got bad. He found his way back to me 2 years later, tracked me across 3 states. He's the only reason I'm still alive." Emily kept her hand near Rex's face, letting the dog memorize her scent. "Ms. Sullivan told me she's been watching you for 18 months. I hired her to find you after Mom died." The revelation hit Grant like a physical blow. Sarah's dead. Car accident. 2 years ago. Drunk driver. Emily's voice went flat. I tried to find you then. Called every VA hospital, every homeless shelter. You disappeared completely. I thought you were dead too. I thought I was alone. Grant couldn't process it. Sarah, gone. Emily, alone and grieving, searching for a father who'd been too broken to be found. The weight of his failures multiplied, crushing. I'm sorry, he whispered. Emmy, I'm so sorry. I know you are. I know you're sorry about everything, but sorry doesn't answer my question. Emily met his eyes. Will you show up? Will you get tested? Will you donate bone marrow if you're a match? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Will you save me? Grant looked down at Rex, still barely conscious in his lap. The dog who'd refused to abandon him despite having every reason to. The dog who'd pulled him back from suicide attempts and hypothermia and the dark spiral of self-destruction that had consumed 7 years of his life. He thought about Dorothy, locked in a storage unit, writing in her diary until the end because she needed him to know the truth. She'd kept her promise. Cross my heart, I'll never abandon you. He thought about David Chin, burning alive but still screaming for Grant to take cover, to survive, to live. He thought about Jake Brennan, being loaded into an ambulance because desperation had driven him to violence. A man who'd let fear destroy what love had built. Grant had spent 15 years running from the war, 7 years running from fatherhood, 3 years running from himself. Rex had found him anyway. Emily had found him anyway. Despite everything, they'd found him. The question wasn't whether he'd show up. The question was whether he'd finally stop running. Yes. The word came out stronger than he expected. Yes, I'll get tested. Yes, I'll donate. Yes, I'll be there. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her for the first time in 7 years. I'll be there for everything, appointments, treatment, recovery. I'll be there when you're scared, when you're angry, when you need someone to scream at because cancer doesn't fight fair and life isn't just. His voice broke. I'll be there, I promise. Cross my heart. Emily collapsed forward, and Grant caught her. They held each other in the dim office while the blizzard raged outside, and Rex breathed shallow between them. Father and daughter and dog, 3 broken things held together by something stronger than pain. I forgive you, Emily whispered against his shoulder. I don't understand everything. I'm still angry about so much, but I forgive you. We'll figure out the rest. Torres cleared his throat from the doorway. We found the painting, half buried in snow, but intact. We'll need both of you to come to the field office tomorrow for statements. He paused. Mr. Lawson, the museum is offering a $100,000 reward for recovery of the painting and evidence in Dorothy Lawson's murder. Given the circumstances, I'll recommend they pay the full amount immediately. Grant barely heard him. Margaret stepped forward, practical as ever. The dog needs a vet. Emily needs rest. Grant needs food and somewhere warm to sleep. She fixed Torres with a look that had probably terrified her son when he was young. Statements can wait until people aren't dying of exposure. Torres nodded. Agreed. But Mr. Lawson, Jake Brennan, will face charges for assault and receiving stolen property. We'll need your testimony. He'll testify, Margaret said. Now, let these people breathe. They moved through the blizzard to Margaret's car. Grant carried Rex. Emily held onto Grant's arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail. At the car, Grant turned back toward the loading dock where Jake Brennan had been. The ambulance was gone. Police lights faded into the white chaos. A man who'd let desperation drive him to violence, who'd almost destroyed everything trying to save it. Grant understood him completely because Grant had been him, had been the desperate man making wrong choices for right reasons. The difference was Rex had pulled Grant back before it was too late. Maybe someone would pull Jake back too. Maybe not. But Grant was done saving everyone else while his own life fell apart. Emily needed him. Rex needed him. For the first time in 15 years, that was enough. They drove through the storm toward warmth, toward safety, toward whatever came next. Grant held his daughter's hand in the darkness and felt Rex's heartbeat steady against his chest, and knew, finally, what it meant to come home. 6 months later, Grant Lawson stood in the barn of a 5-acre property 30 miles outside Milwaukee, watching 8 veterans work with 8 dogs that nobody else had wanted. The spring sun warmed his shoulders through the open door. Inside, Marcus Jake Brennan's former hired muscle guided a 3-legged pit bull through basic commands. The dog responded perfectly, tail wagging, eager to please, despite the abuse that had cost him a leg. Marcus's own arm still bore scars from Rex's bite that night in the storage unit, but he'd asked Grant for help anyway. Said he'd recognized something in Grant's eyes. Brotherhood. The kind that didn't quit even when quitting made sense. Second Chance's K-9 Training Center. Emily read from the sign she'd just mounted beside the barn door. "You think Grandma Dorothy would approve?" Grant looked at his daughter, his living, breathing, cancer-free daughter, and felt his throat tighten the way it always did when he remembered how close he'd come to losing her before they'd even reconciled. "She'd love it." He wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders. She'd gained back 20 pounds. Her hair had grown in thick and dark like Sarah's. The port in her chest was gone, removed after 6 months of clear scans. The bone marrow transplant had worked, against odds that the doctors had carefully explained were never guaranteed. It had worked. Grant had been there for everything, every appointment, every treatment, every moment of fear when Emily's body fought to accept his cells as her own. He'd held her hand through pain he couldn't take away and celebrated victories measured in blood counts and percentages. 95% chance of long-term survival. That's what Der Mitchell had said yesterday. 95% chance that Grant's daughter would live a full life. He'd take those odds. He'd spent 3 years on the streets with worse. Rex limped out of the barn, moving slower now, but steady. The hip surgery paid for with the museum reward money had given him mobility back. At 8 years old, the German Shepherd had earned his retirement, but he still insisted on supervising the training sessions, still positioned himself between Grant and any perceived threat, still slept across the doorway of Grant's bedroom every night, making sure his human didn't disappear. "The reporter from Channel 6 is here," Margaret called from the house. She'd moved into the property's guest cottage 3 months ago, claiming she was too old to run the pawn shop alone anymore. Grant suspected she just wanted to keep an eye on him, on all of them. Her son James's photograph hung in the barn office, watching over the work he'd never gotten to finish. The reporter, a young woman with kind eyes and a recording device set up in the training paddock. She wanted to do a feature on Grant's program, how it matched homeless veterans with shelter dogs nobody wanted, how it gave both a second chance at life. "Mr. Lawson, you've trained 37 service dogs in 6 months. Place them with veterans suffering from PSD, traumatic brain injuries, depression. Your success rate is extraordinary. What's your secret?" Grant looked at Rex, then at the veterans working in the barn. "No secret. Just match broken people with broken dogs. We understand each other. We fix each other. Your program has been credited with 0 veteran suicides among participants. That's remarkable." "It's Rex." Grant's voice roughened. "He saved me first. Showed me what loyalty looks like when everything else falls apart. These dogs," he gestured toward the barn, "they do the same for their veterans. They give us a reason to get up, to stay sober, to believe we're worth saving." The reporter switched topics. "The FBI closed Dorothy Lawson's murder case last month. Raymond Brennan was posthumously charged. His accomplice, Martin Hendricks, now 78, is awaiting trial. You provided the evidence that solved a 40-year-old cold case. How does that feel?" Grant considered the question. How did it feel to finally know the truth about his grandmother's disappearance? To understand that she'd kept her promise, that she'd loved him until her last breath, that every year of believing himself abandoned had been built on a lie. "It feels like she can rest now," he said finally, "and maybe I can too." They'd buried Dorothy properly in March. Small ceremony, Grant, Emily, Margaret, and 40 veterans from the training program standing in the cold while a minister spoke about truth and sacrifice and promises kept. Grant had planted an oak tree at her grave, for roots, for family, for staying. The reporter asked about Jake Brennan next. Grant had wondered when that question would come. Jake had pleaded guilty to assault and receiving stolen property. Got 7 years. Served at a minimum security facility. His wife had filed for divorce. His children visited monthly, though his daughter Sophie had stopped speaking to him. The price of desperation, paid in fractured relationships and time lost. "I testified at his sentencing," Grant said carefully. "Asked for leniency. Judge gave him 7 instead of 15 because of it. Why show mercy to a man who attacked you, who threatened your dog? Because I understood him." Grant met the reporter's eyes. "I've been desperate. I've made terrible choices trying to fix unfixable things. The difference is Rex pulled me back before I hurt anyone. Jake didn't have a Rex." The reporter scribbled notes, then looked up. "Speaking of which, there are rumors that Jake Brennan is volunteering for your program when he's released. Is that true?" Grant nodded. "He reached out from prison, said he wanted to help, to do something good with what's left of his life." He paused. I said yes. Second chances aren't just for veterans and dogs. They're for anyone willing to do the work. The interview wrapped up. The reporter packed her equipment, clearly moved by the story. Grant knew how it would play. Heartwarming piece about redemption and service dogs. Feel-good content for the evening news. But the reality was messier, harder. Grant still woke up screaming some nights, trapped in nightmares about Kandahar, still fought the urge to drink when the guilt got too heavy, still struggled with the basic tasks of being someone's father after 7 years of being nobody's anything. Emily found him after the reporter left, sitting on the porch with Rex at his feet. "Mom called from heaven yesterday," she said lightly, sitting beside him. "It was a game they played. What would Sarah say if she could see them now? Yeah, what'd she say? She said you're doing okay. Not perfect, but okay." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. "She said she's proud of you, that you finally came home." Grant's eyes burned. "I'm proud of you too, baby girl, every single day." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Inside the barn, dogs barked and veterans laughed, the sounds of healing, of life continuing despite everything trying to stop it. Margaret brought dinner, pot roast and potatoes, enough to feed everyone. They ate family style in the barn office. 8 veterans and one 19-year-old college student and one 72-year-old woman who'd adopted them all. Rex moved between chairs, accepting scraps and ear scratches, supervising with the gravity of a general reviewing troops. After dinner, Grant walked the property alone, 5 acres of possibility, of second chances. The settlement money from the museum, $480,000 after legal fees, had bought the land, renovated the barn, built 3 small cottages for veterans in crisis. The rest sat in a trust for Emily's education and future medical needs. Grant owned nothing personally. The property belonged to a nonprofit he'd established, Second Chances K. Everything he needed fit in a single room of the main house. Clothes, books, photographs of David, Chen, and Dorothy and Sarah, Emily's childhood drawings he'd kept in his van. He didn't need much anymore, just his daughter, his dog, his purpose. At Dorothy's oak tree transplanted from her grave to the property's edge, Grant stopped and placed his hand on the bark. "I kept my promise, Grandma. Ma," he said quietly. "I found the truth. I stopped running. I'm being the man you believed I could be." His voice broke. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Even after 40 years, even from the grave, you kept your promise, too." Rex pressed against his leg, always there, always watching, always faithful. Emily appeared in the dusk, crossing the lawn with the Margaret. They'd made a tradition of evening walks, the 3 of them processing the day's victories and defeats together. "You coming, Dad? Or you gonna stand there talking to trees all night?" Grant smiled. "Coming, baby girl." They walked together in the fading light, father and daughter and dog and the woman who'd brought them all together. 4 people who'd been broken by life in different ways, now held together by something stronger than pain, love, loyalty, second chances, and the absolute refusal to give up, even when giving up made perfect sense. Behind them, the barn lights glowed warm against the spring darkness. Inside, veterans who'd lost hope were finding it again, 1 dog at a time. Tomorrow, Grant would train 3 more pairs. Next week, 5 more veterans would arrive, homeless and hopeless and ready to quit. He'd tell them what Rex had taught him: loyalty means showing up every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He'd tell them what Dorothy's diary had taught him: the truth will set you free, even when it breaks you first. He'd tell them what Emily had taught him: forgiveness isn't earned, it's given, and sometimes it's the only thing that saves us. At the porch, Emily turned to him. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, Emmy. Cross my heart." Rex settled at their feet, head on paws, watching the stars emerge. An old soldier, a loyal friend, a bridge between the man Grant had been and the man he'd finally become. Somewhere in the darkness, other broken things were finding their way home. Veterans and dogs, fathers and daughters, truth and justice delayed but not denied. The war was over. Finally, after 15 years, the war was over. Grant Lawson was home. Sometimes the hardest journey isn't across battlefields or through blizzards. It's the journey back to the people who never stopped loving us, even when we stopped loving ourselves. Grant's story, it reminds us that it's never too late to come home. That loyalty, whether from a faithful dog or a forgiving daughter, can pull us back from the darkest edges. We've all carried burdens we thought were too heavy to share. We've all made choices we wish we could undo. But second chances aren't just for the broken. They're for anyone brave enough to stop running and start healing. Rex didn't save Grant because the veteran was worthy. He saved him because that's what love does. It shows up every single day, even when hope seems lost. Emily didn't forgive her father because he deserved it. She forgave him because holding on to pain hurt more than letting it go. Dorothy kept her promise from beyond the grave because truth matters more than time. This story isn't just about one man and his dog. It's about all of us learning that coming home to family, to purpose, to ourselves is always possible. Have you ever experienced a second chance that changed your life? What does loyalty mean to you in your own journey? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.